Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
In the first reading, God presents himself in a terrifying spectacle on Mount Sinai, hoping in this way to instill the fear of God in the people so that they will not rebel but reach the good things that he wants to give them in the promised land. And in the Gospel today, our Lord speaks of this mystery speaks at least a little about the mystery of predestination, of election, that some souls are more chosen to receive truths and others less. And it seems that this is connected with their willingness to go along with God's plan. Where Isaiah speaks of them not hearing and really not wanting to hear what God is saying to them. And so Christ, for this reason, makes his teaching somewhat concealed with parables. One of the certainly chosen souls would be Blessed Mary Magdalene of the Counts of Martinengo, born in Brescia in northern Italy on the feast of St. Francis, October 4th in 1687. Her father was Leopardo, a leopard of the Counts Martinengo, and her mother was also from a family of counts. Because she didn't look very healthy when she was born, she was taken immediately to church, where she was baptized Margaret after her mother. But it was not her, but her mother who died soon after, a few months after the birth of little Margaret. And Ursuline was entrusted with raising her, and she got a very good early education. Also, learning was important to her father, not just the military concerns of his rank in life, of his state as a count, but he was also a man with a large library. She applied herself with great passion to her studies, and at 6 or 7 she could already read the breviary in Latin. She was given to prayer, and the devil realized that this was a chosen soul, so diabolical apparitions and temptations started when she was a child. But she was also watched over by angels. In the autumn of 1696, when she was 8, the family went out for a day in their carriage. And at one point, the horses panicked and started galloping out of control, bouncing the carriage around. Little Margaret was thrown out of the carriage and run over by it. And this was not a small carriage, it was drawn by 6 horses. So they expected to find her mangled, but instead she was unhurt. She later said that she'd been protected by 2 invisible arms. In 1698, it was time to send her to school. She was sent to the Ursuline Monastery of St. Mary of the Angels to be educated. 2 of her maternal aunts were nuns in that monastery, whose members and students were taken from the flower of the aristocracy of Brescia. But the future Blessed was not looking for a comfortable life. She spent her years there in prayer and penance, striving to imitate Christ, longing to offer herself as a perpetual holocaust and gaining reputation for holiness. Not long after she entered, she made her first communion. She was still 10. The host fell on the ground and rolled a bit. Margaret picked it up with her tongue, but this happening made too much of an impression on her. She was afraid that it was a sign that Jesus was running away from her because she was unworthy. She grew in prayer, and when she was taught how to meditate, she had difficulty putting the instructions into practice, because in fact she was already past the stage of meditation. She was in a simple, effective prayer with which she united her soul to God with great ease. When she was 13, she got her confessor's permission to make a vow of virginity. But what followed this was not more spiritual delights, but a dark night in which the Lord seemed to have abandoned her. She was tempted against faith, tempted to blaspheme. She felt aversion to prayer and other works of piety. Despite this, she kept praying, kept applying herself to the spiritual life. She thought that she must be a great sinner, unworthy of God's love and mercy, to be abandoned like this. And this trial went on for 9 or 10 years, until 1709. In 1704, when she was 16, her education in the monastery was completed, and she returned to her family. It was time to think about her future. Her father had arranged an excellent marriage for her, but Margaret asked for time to reflect. All of her relatives, including her two aunts who were nuns, encouraged her to go ahead and marry. A vision, however, made it clear what she was to do. Our Lady appeared to her flanked by St. Clare and St. Teresa of Avila, and each of the two saints offered to cover her with the mantle of their order. And Margaret turned to Our Lady to ask which offer to accept, and was told to accept St. Clare's offer. Shortly after this, she had another vision in which she saw crosses made of fire and realized that God had chosen her to be a martyr of love. She told her father her decision. She wanted to enter the Poor Clares. And when her father could accept her becoming a nun, but he wanted her to at least enter that nice monastery where her aunts were. She wanted instead to enter the Capuchin Poor Clares, who are known for their intense poverty and penance. That's not an easy life for the daughter of a count. She wouldn't have servants, and she would have to do all the menial tasks herself. At Christmas 1704, she went to the monastery of Capuchin Poor Clares and asked to be admitted. She was accepted as a candidate and then sent to a trial year outside the monastery supervised by the Ursulines. After this trial year, she had to return to her family in order to be free of influences from monasteries and make a free decision to enter religious life, if that's what she wanted to do. Her father used this opportunity to get her to change her mind, and this time he almost succeeded. He sent her to Venice, where, as he had planned, she was dazzled by life in the city and offered a fine marriage. She was on the verge of accepting when another girl told her that she shouldn't make a decision that important without praying over it. So she spent the night in prayer, and in the morning it was all clear. She had to become a nun of Poor Clare. So she went back to Brescia on the vigil of the Assumption, 1705, and told her father her decision. They talked for a long time. And she said to him, "You will see, sir, that I will become a saint and will be the consolation of all our relatives." Indeed, she did. After her retreat on September 8th, 1705, she began the Capuchin novitiate, receiving the name Mary Magdalene. She did think of herself as a great sinner, but this was because she was still spiritually in a dark night. But in any case, she would imitate St. Mary Magdalene in devoting her life to prayer and penance. A fellow novice who had known her before, when they were both living in the world, had a strong dislike for her and spoke ill of her often to the novice mistress, so that the novice mistress became convinced that she should oppose Sister Mary Magdalene's profession. And the other nuns thought that this fine candidate should be admitted to profession, but the novice mistress's vote would be enough to exclude her. And so once again, Sister Mary Magdalene spent the night in prayer, and in the morning the nuns voted. The next day the nuns voted, and when they counted the votes, all the votes were in favor of admitting her, but that wasn't the vote. Weren't the votes that they put into the ballot box. They recognized this as a miracle, a sign from God that she was indeed to be admitted to profession. And so, September 8th, 1706, she made her vows. There was one thing she'd been unable to do. It was strongly recommended to make a general confession of one's whole life before these steps, before being vested as a novice and before making vows for the first time. But she didn't have confidence in the confessor. When that confessor was replaced after his 3-year term, the new confessor was someone who our Blessed felt she could trust. She made a general confession, and after all those years, peace finally returned to her soul. So early in her life in the monastery, she was given the humblest duties in the convent. You can sort of imagine that this was this girl was an aristocrat, unlike a lot of the others, and so by giving her these humble duties, they wanted to teach her humility, teach her that she wouldn't have servants in the monastery. Later, she was elected Novice Mistress in 1723, a position she also held 2 other times, in 1727 and 1731. Well, in between those, she was assigned to the turn. So in 32 years of life in the monastery, she did nothing but pray steadily, work tirelessly, giving herself very little rest and inflicting harsh penances on herself. She was favored with striking mystical phenomena, such as stigmata, ecstasies, eating extraordinarily little, luminosity, infused knowledge, prophecy, miracles. Blessed Martinengo is a contemporary of another Capuchin Poor Clare, St. Veronica Giuliani. Both of them did extreme penance. Both of them were favored with similar mystical phenomena. But Blessed Martinengo was a better writer, really. So while St. Veronica wrote many volumes of her diary in bad Italian, Blessed Martinengo was able to write works on the spiritual life. Our Blessed also suffered from severe persecution from confessors and sisters. Often her aristocratic ways were misunderstood by her sisters, were seen as signs of pride. In 1729, the ordinary confessor of the monastery, who was not a very intellectually gifted man, decided that the spiritual maxims she had written were the dangerous fruit of a deluded, proud, and heretical mind, and he burned them. He also judged the record of her mystical experiences and to be all a fraud, all instigated by a diabolical spirit. Based on his decisions, he was suspended from every position of authority in the monastery as a punishment. But this didn't last long, because soon the bishop realized that the confessor had made a mistake. Between 1732 and 1737, she rose to the positions of abbess and vicar, governing the monastery with a good practical sense, in addition to her mystical insight into the souls of the nuns. At Easter 1737, she had to resign from the position of abbess because she was too ill to continue. And she died on July 27, 1737, and was immediately considered a saint by her fellow nuns and by the citizens of Brescia. Praised be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
Would like to grow in love and knowledge of the Immaculate Virgin Mary? Consider a subscription to the Missio Immacolate magazine. The Missio is a bi-monthly magazine published by the Franciscans of the Immaculate for over 15 years. Every issue of the Missio features articles about Our Lady's privileges and her mission in the Church and world for the sanctification and conversion of souls. The Missio takes to heart the ancient saying of the Church, De Maria nunquam satis, of Mary you can never say enough. You can subscribe online at missiomagazine.com, that's MISSIO, magazine.com, or go to the homepage of airmaria.com. Back issues of the Missio are also available upon request. The Missio is a practical way to behold your mother and take her into your home. Ave Maria.